What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and I am back with the bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. It's a big weekend. There is a top level UFC lightweight main event going down, and I will be heading to Dublin for a really big Bellator event. 21 fights scheduled at the time of recording. A middleweight title fight in the main event. Aaron Pico is back. Sinead Kavangh has a big fight on the card, as well as all the Irish people you're used to: Peter Queally, Brian Moore, et al. And we'll be checking all them out over the course of the weekend. But I'm here with your bets for some of those fights. Do you know what, this week? There's a lot of field bets this week. I'd nearly say my first four bets are all kind of field bets. They're all relatively close enough prices, but we'll get to them in a second. And the flyer this week is a bit different as well, so we'll get to that also. Before we do, though, we have to review last week. And again, did I clean my microphone here? It was a good week. It was a good week mixed with an unlucky week, we would say. When you have 5 bets and 2 of them end in draws, that's always slightly unlucky, and this one was unlucky as well. So the 2 that end in draws, obviously we gave you Valentina Shevchenko, but for the 10-8 in the 5th round, she would have won. But for the big mistake she made in the 5th round, she would have won as well. But look, shoulda, woulda, coulda, that's the name of the game, and that's what happened, and she didn't win. Jakub Wiślak as well, he was miles ahead on the card. An illegal kick towards, I think, was it the 4th round of the main event over in KSW, got deducted 2 points, went to the cards, and it was, what was it, a technical draw? I don't know, whatever it was. But very good judging as well, I must say, over there from the KSW crew. But at the same time, ruined our bet, so thanks very much, lads. But the other 3 hit, again, flyer hits. We got Della Maddalena to win by decision. It was at plus 350, but I think in a couple of places you might have been able to get it around plus 400, so that was a very good bet, and I think that was, again, good judging to send him away as the winner. I think he did win over Kevin Holland. I think it was it was a good fight, but I do think Della Maddalena was by far the better fighter. And then the other 2 were pretty good prices. Minus 110 for Tracy Cortez. Obviously, she got the better of Jazdavicius. And then Michael Michalski over in KSW. I was very, very confident in that one, a plus 175. And it hit. He got a good win there over his somewhat rookie opponent, who will be back again, I'm sure, in the future. So, all in all, it was a pretty good week, I suppose. Those other 2, we were on for 5 out of 5 there. We really were on for 5 out of 5, but look, that's the world. Still, if you can hit it plus 350, I don't think anyone is too mad, along with a plus 175, along with a minus 110. If you bet the 5 of them, I think you're probably pretty happy coming up on Sunday morning, last. So we will leave there. Just the results overall: 64 of 130 bets, which is coming up on the 50-50 ratio, so not too bad. I'm happy enough with that. And then 13 of 33 overall with the flyers, which I'm absolutely delighted by, considering they're always plus 350, plus 500, plus 700, even plus 1400 last week if you tuned in. So I'm delighted to have handed out 13 flyer winners this year. I think that's pretty good. So let's move on. Let's talk about next week. So I've got 3 bets from the UFC, 1 bet from Bellator, and then the flyer this week is a special Bellator parlay we're going for. First things first, though, let's talk about the UFC bets. My first pick of the week, and this price again has moved around in the last couple of days, but the best price you can get at the moment, minus 150 for Rafael Fiziev over Mateusz Gamrot in their fight, obviously in the UFC main event. Now, I think this minus 150. Now this is a kind of a precipice price for me. If this goes out, I'm looking here at minus 175. if that goes out any bit more, if that goes out to minus 185, maybe minus 200, I don't think I'd be betting on it then, right? But I do like it at minus 150. And I like when I looked at the prices, the way it was moving, it started at minus 174, then came in all the way to minus 150. And in some places it's moved out, and actually it was minus 145 at one stage as well. I was kind of thinking at that price, maybe it's coming in and it's going to continue to come in, and maybe we'll end up at minus 130 or 125 maybe. The fact it's kind of turned and gone the other way will tell you exactly, exactly the thinking there. Let's be honest, I think people liked it at that price. I think people bet it at that price, and obviously the bookmakers reacted and have turned that price around the other way. And I think, I'll say it again, there's a sweet spot there. I think that minus 150 is probably the sweet spot. And I like to bet at that price, but anything more probably wouldn't. Here's the reason for it. I just think Fiziev has more of a speciality about him than Gamrot. And what I mean by that is, sometimes when there's an even fight, I said this last week with the Jack Della Maddalena Kevin Holland fight, right? That fight to me was two guys whose athletic ability would almost, offset the other. I think they're both really, really good athletes. Usually when Della Maddalena fights someone, he's the better athlete. Usually when Kevin Holland fights someone, he's by far the better athlete. And I thought that was going to offset each other. It did, I think, in the fight, and in the guy with the better technique won, which in my opinion was, in that case, Della Maddalena. In this one, I think we're coming in here against two guys who are very, very well-rounded, right? And I would argue Mateusz Gamrot is more well-rounded now, right? But is being more well-rounded going to win you the fight, or is being a kind of a special fighter in one way, which I think Fiziev is more on the feet, is that going to get you? Which of those two things are going to get you to win? Like being slightly better of an all-rounder fighter, or being, I would say, maybe slightly or a lot better of a speciality kind of striker, right? And this is an interesting debate, I suppose, we can have about MMA. And usually I would be kind of torn, but for this one, I'm just leaning Fiziev. Like, you look at Leon Edwards, right? I suppose his speciality is his well-roundedness. He's become a champion because he is unbelievably well-rounded. I say it all the time. He's not the best at anything, probably. He's not the best striker. He's not the best grappler. He's not the best in the clinch. He's very, very, very good in all of them. And that has brought him to a world championship, right? Now, I just think with Gamrot, he has all of that. Like, he's Leon Edwards-ish, kind of. And the problem I see with that right, there's no problem with it necessarily, right? That is what you should want. That's what you should aim for. That's what you should be as an MMA fighter, right? But when you get into divisions like welterweight now, Leon Edwards is defining it, and I was wrong. I didn't think he'd be a champion. I was absolutely wrong, and maybe I'd be wrong about Gamrot as well. The well-roundedness only works as a game to get to the very, very, very top if there's no one else who is also extremely well-rounded and has something special, like, in my opinion, Fiziev has, right? So if you had another Leon Edwards, but this Leon Edwards had like a bullet, I was going to say a bullet of a high kick. Wait, maybe the one we have now is a bullet of a high kick, but let's say like a bullet, a bullet left hand that put people out like McGregor, or a bullet right hand like Junior Dos Santos who put people out. Now, he would beat the Leon Edwards that's there at the moment, right? Now, maybe people would argue, maybe he wouldn't, maybe he'd rely on that too much and the well-rounded Leon Edwards would beat him. Okay, that's fair enough, right? But I think generally I would favour the guy with something a little bit special, as long as it's even elsewhere. And that's kind of, and again, I told you at the very start, feel this week. My opinions are feel this week more than anything else. There's two things to this as well, right? From Fiziev's side, one from Fiziev's side and one from Gamrot's side. So Fiziev now, I think the big issue with him over his UFC career was he wasn't able to get the opportunities maybe. You know, he fought some good guys, absolutely. Like, you know, he fought Bobby Green, he fought Brad Riddell, Mark Chikese, who's a very, very good fighter and all this. But in his last two, you know, he's had 7.5 rounds against Dos Anjos and Gaethje and did pretty well in both of those fights. Obviously, he did very well in the Dos Anjos fight, finishing him. And, you know, it was a majority decision against Justin Gaethje. So that top level work is now there, right? So he knows the level he has to get. And you see a lot with fighters, say like a Fiziev, who's only 30 years of age this year. They see that level and they rise to it. No, maybe they won't, maybe he won't, right? Maybe he won't, but I think he will. The difference between that and what Gamrot is, who's only a couple of years older than him, right? He'll be 33 this year, so, you know, there is 3 years in it, 32 at the moment. I actually think he has reached that level a long time ago, but it was just, you know, it was in KSW, right? And he put a lot of his prime years into being one of the best guys in KSW against other really, really, really good guys in KSW. And the facts speak for themselves. When he came to the UFC, okay, he lost a split decision to Kutateladze, but then, you know, he beat Holtzman, Stevens, Ferreira, Tsariuk, and Turner. And okay, he lost to Dariush in the middle of that, but, you know, he had fought lads like, you know, Norman Park, who never should have been cut from the UFC a couple of times, 3 times, in fact. He fought Kleber Koike, who is the champion over in Rizin. You know, he fought Mansour Bournoui, who'll be fighting this weekend in Bellator, who's one of the top lightweights in the world. Andre Winner, when he was a young fighter, only 4 or 5 fights into his career. He's had so many big fights, tough fights, like, you know, fights on massive cards as well, that he's kind of been there and done that for a long time. And I suppose the freshness and the level reaching of Fiziev that he's doing now is maybe a thing that Gamrot has done a while back. And I just want, like, Mike, I've a kind of a question about that rather than a call on it. It's like, was it a bit too far back? Like, is Gamrot reaching this point in his career maybe a little bit too late? Like, he's performed well in all of those fights recently, but, you know, the Turner fight, I think if that was Fiziev in there, I think Fiziev would have caused him a lot of problems. So that's kind of the reason why I'm going for Fiziev. I just think what Fiziev has done over the last while will bring him on a lot. And I think Gamrot is the finished article. And the last point I want to make is, and a major point, I think it's easier for someone to prepare for Gamrot than it is for Fiziev, because Fiziev is going to be more of a changing fighter and has been over the last while. Whereas Gamrot, as I said again, he is that fighter. He is, you know, in his prime. He has been a prime fighter for a good few years now. And, you know, a static target in terms of ability and game planning is a lot easier than one that's moving. So for that reason, I'm going to go for Fiziev to win at -150. Right. My next pick from the UFC is going to be Bryce Mitchell, who's fighting Danige, and he is available right now at -175. Now, obviously a bit of a higher bet here, but and you know, he opened up at -125, which to me is amazing. I think that's why the price has gone out an awful lot. If you look at Bryce Mitchell's prior fights, right? We forget the Topuria one for a minute, but like Barboza, he opened up -163, -117 against Feely. Bobby Moffett, he was the underdog. He was a favorite against Tyler Diamond. He was -550 against Medina. Like, and there's 2 other ones there. He was below -200 in all of them. I actually think people maybe underestimate, you know, apart from the Medina fight there, I think they underestimate how good Bryce Mitchell actually is and how effective he is. Now, maybe effective is the better word there than good or you know, well-rounded or anything like that. You know, it's very easy to look at someone when they fight against Ilia Topuria and say, oh, he's been kind of shown up a little bit there. He's not well-rounded, you know. But Ilia Topuria is, in my opinion, if not the second best, the third best 145er in the world. He's brilliant. He is absolutely and utterly fantastic. And to lose to him is no shame. But all the guys I mentioned before that, Bryce Mitchell beat them all. He beat Barboza, he beat Feely, he beat Rosa, etc., etc., etc. He beat Tyler Diamond, who's a very good fighter as well. And I think so. There's a clear road to victory here for Bryce Mitchell. Wrestle. Now, that clear road to victory has an Ilia Topuria sized bump in it, because we see it regularly. I think we saw it at the weekend with Shevchenko. You know, her performance was good, but not a Shevchenko of old performance. And I think that was a mentality thing more than anything else, right? Sometimes a mentality thing can help you. Look at Adesanya in the second fight against Pereira. I think the mentality thing really helped him in that fight. You know, some people, and I think Adesanya is a good example of this. When he's pushed to the pin, if his Collier, he actually rises to it, you know, and does very well. But when he's kind of expected to win or something, you know, and you know, maybe he doesn't do as well, or he coasts a little bit or whatever. And it depends. Like, that's a character thing, and that's a very good character trait on one side of Adesanya and a bad maybe on the other side. But I wonder what Bryce Mitchell will be like in a similar situation. So, and the situation he finds himself in now is he lost a fight for the first time in his career, right? How is he going to turn around? And not, you know, first time in his professional career. How is he going to turn that around? Is it going to be a case of, I have this setback and it has, you know, G'd me up to become an even better fighter and a more dominant fighter and everything, a more well-rounded fighter? Or is it one like, you remember Ngannou versus Derek Lewis, where he basically stood there and didn't throw a punch for the whole fight, right? One of those two situations will happen. And I think if you're Bryce Mitchell, or if you're someone around Bryce Mitchell, and you're fighting Dan Ige, your option has to be wrestle. And that should be the option anyway. But when you need it, you should do it. And I think another matchup maybe for Bryce Mitchell, he mightn't have done it. He might be as inclined to do it as against Ige. But I actually think Ige matchup, although it's a difficult enough fight, and I give Ige a chance, right? But it's almost a good matchup because he will be forced to wrestle. Now, he should be forced to wrestle in every fight in terms of his game planning, but this one I think will be one of them. And my only worry for him would be if he, you know, got away from the wrestling a little bit, or wasn't confident enough. And confident is the word, because it's all about confidence. You have to be confident enough to wrestle, but also confident enough to continue to wrestle. And if he is, I think he will. Now, if he isn't, I think Ige will beat him up on the feet, but I'm banking on that, and that's why I'm going for it at -175. Right, we'll finish off the UFC bets here, and then we'll move on to the Bellator bets. Again here, my third bet of the week. This is a real feel bet. My third bet of the week is Jay Collier at +120 to beat Mo Usman. And the feel on this is just one of watching Usman a few times and thinking, this guy he's just not great. Now, is Collier a great fighter? You know, absolutely not. But I think he's a good fighter, right? I think he's a good fighter. I don't know, could I say the same about Usman? Now, look, he's won his 2 fights in the UFC, and he knocked out Zach Punga, I believe is it pronounced, and he got a decision over Junior Tafa, and that was a good win and a bit of a better performance. But everything I've watched from him so far is kind of like he's fallen over on his shots. He's just looking for that power. It's going to be a kind of a turning point in a fight that wins him rounds and things, especially the Kavangh fight. And I think that's a fight, right, where he was losing badly, could have got finished, and then landed that one big shot. And look, that's always going to be a possibility at heavyweight. You know, I get as well. Look, Charles Barnett knocked out Collier a couple of fights ago. Of course, it's going to be a possibility. I just think Collier, if he's anyway smart at all, will just kind of jab him up and outwork him. And what I mean by outwork, I don't mean like put on like a cardio clinic over 3 rounds or whatever, but just like touch him, get your combinations going, and just avoid the big shots he's throwing. And you should win the fight if you do that, in my opinion. Now, like Usman, like his brother, is a really good athlete, and he has that big power, and he can turn things around at one stage. But like, when I see a fighter plus 120, and I think this guy is a way better fighter than the other guy, it's very hard for me to turn that around or turn that down. Look, Collier as well, you know, betting on a guy who has lost four of his last 5 fights is never a good thing, right? It's never a wise thing, and I never would normally do it, probably. But in this one, it's just a little bit different. Again, it's a feel one. I just feel like Usman isn't going to be a top fighter, and I feel like he's going to get stopped in his tracks by someone like Collier. Now, maybe it won't be Collier, and if you're out there listening to this and you think, what are you talking about, Sean? Collier doesn't have the ability to do that. Absolutely don't bet on it then. Absolutely don't bet on it. But I think it's coming. And I think a fight like this will be a real sticking point over the next while for Usman. And my call is that it's going to happen this Saturday night. So, plus 120, Jay Collier. Right. The fourth bet of the week before we get to the special parlay flyer of the week. This one is from Bellator. And I'm going for Sinead Kavangh to win over Sara Collins, and she is minus 150. This price, again, has moved around a little bit. Started at minus 150, went out to, was close to minus 160. I'm looking here as minus 156, and he went back in to 153, and now into minus 150 again. So it is moving around, not massively, but it's moving around a little bit. I think this is a very interesting fight, and the reason I'm going for Sinead Kavangh is experience, right? And she is, and not just experience. Oh, she's more fights. She has experienced fighters like Sara Collins before and fought him and beat him. Like she fought Leah McCord, she got injured and she beat her. Like Leah, big and strong like Sara Collins, probably bigger and stronger, but with like that judo background and all of that as well. And people, I need to say this. I said it on the preview as well, but I'm going to say it again. Sinead Kavangh's record, I think, let me just look here. It's 9-5. But her record could really be a lot better than that, right? Okay, she lost to Cyborg fair and square, but Leslie Smith, I think that won robbery of the year in a couple of places. You know, Janae Harding was a cut, very unlucky. She went down and she beat her after that again. The Blinkow and Razafarian fights, both close, split decision. One was a split decision, but both very, very close. She literally could have won both of those fights. She should have won the Leslie Smith fight. Like, okay, the Janae Harding fight was a cut, fair enough, right? You take that away, you turn that and around, and her record is suddenly, 12-2. And there's a very different gleam to it. And that's, that's probably what it should be. Or maybe 11-3, right? At worst. And I think people would look at Sinead Kavangh a little bit differently then and look at her career a little bit differently. And she's a very good fighter. A very, 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 very good fighter. I spoke about Collier losing 4 of his last fights. She's won 4 of her last fights. And she's beaten all of the best people who were in Bellator at the time, aside from Chris Cyborg. She's beaten Janae Harding, as I mentioned, beaten Leah McCord, as I mentioned, Katrina Lair, she beat Olga Rubin as well. She should have beaten Leslie Smith before that, and it should be 5 of the last 6. But that's it anyway. The look kind of has turned for her over the last few years. And, since 2019, the only person to beat her is Chris Cyborg. And I think she deserves a little bit more respect for that. You know, she's 37 years of age now as well. This is the time if, you know, she wins this and gets back and gets maybe another shot at Cyborg. I don't know if Cyborg maybe is retired or whatever. Maybe she gets another title shot. We'll see what the crack is with Bellator still around. But this is a massive fight for her. Like, as well, this might be the last fight for all of these Irish fighters in Dublin. You never know. You really never know. So this is a massive fight for Sinead Kavangh, and she is someone in the past who's always risen to the occasion. You know, she's, a 5-time national boxing champion. She's used to it. She rises to the occasions, and she always does well. Like, Collins will come in, and she'll try to take her down, and she'll try to wrestle her. She'll try to use her judo trips against her. But I remember talking to Sinead before one of the recent fights, and she, you know, I think it was even on here, maybe on Sherdog, and she kind of said, you know, right, I've been fighting in MMA now for how many years? 8, 9 years as an amateur and as a pro. Like, do you not think I learned a bit of takedown defense? Do you not think I learned a bit of wrestling? And like, it's showed in her last few fights. She absolutely has that. And I think against someone, and I said experience before, so she's experienced people like Sarah Collins before, but also like the other part of the experience, having a lot of fights. And being there and doing that, and you know, in the big 3 arena crowd as well. She's the top Irish fighter on the card as well, which will bring an added roar, I suppose, to her. Sarah Collins hasn't felt that before, and she hasn't experienced that, and that's something that takes a round or two to get over, you know. So I think it's I'm backing Sinead Kavangh here. I like the price at -150. I like the matchup. If she can stop that takedown, and you know, I said it before with Bryce Mitchell. Fighters like that, if you can stop the takedown, that fighter has to continue to go takedown. They have to. Now, Collins is not a bad striker as well, don't get me wrong, but if she stops going for the takedown and turns it into a boxing or kickboxing match against Sinead Kavangh, that's not a good time. You know, she's meeting a 5-time national boxing champion in a country where women's boxing is pretty good. You know, we've 2 gold medalists over the last while. One of the, the greatest female boxer of all time in Katie Taylor, and, Kelly Harrington, who Sinead Kavangh came up, but she was right there with them, you know? It was only politics that turned her away from boxing and put her to MMA. Sinead Kavangh can box. And I think if it turns into a boxing match, I think that -150 price looks very, very, very good. Now, having said that as well, right, I'll put this out there. I think Sarah Collins is the future of the division. She is a very, 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 very good fighter, but this might be a little bit too soon. So -150, Sinead Kavangh. Right. I am going to move on to the flyer. And the flyer this week is a parlay, as I mentioned. This parlay is around +330 plus. The prices are kind of moving and flowing. I'm looking at it right now at the moment. It's +326, but by the time maybe this video comes out, by the time the event happens, it might be a little bit different, but that's what it is right at the moment. So it is a 5-fight parlay, and I'm going for Burnell, Barnouille, Kenny Mukhana, Peter Queally, and Acela Juge to win their fights at Bellator. Obviously, I'm not going to give a massive breakdown on all of them here, but maybe a quick look at those fights. I think the Burnell fight against Daniel Weichel is a very winnable fight for him. I think his wrestling is going to be too good for Weichel. I think when he gets the fight to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is going to be way too good. And I actually think he can probably win the fight on the feet as well. He just needs to maybe stick and move a little bit more than he has in recent fights. And I think he should be okay there. The second bet was Barnouille, who's fighting JJ Wilson. Again, JJ Wilson, a good, well-rounded fighter, but Barnouille, I think a little bit more well-rounded, again, with a little bit of speciality. He's very good on the ground. A lot of fights as well, 25 fights into his career. I think I was very surprised to see him lose to Bryn Primus, if I'm being honest. And like, he has lost fights in the past, Mateusz, Gamrot, as I mentioned earlier on, even Bushinger, and he's bounced back from them and won very well in the fights afterwards. So he has shown that, we've talked about Bryce Mitchell. He has shown that in the past, and I think he will bounce back, and I think he will do it here as well. The third bet, Kenny Mukhana. Now, this is the closest bet, -275. As a straight up bet, I probably wouldn't do it because his opponent, Josh O'Connor, is a very good fighter. But I do think Kenny will have enough to come through it. I think he has improved an awful lot over the last while. I think he'll just get the upper hand on Josh in the first round or the first goings of the round. And I think once Kenny's on top, it's very hard to turn it around against him. And I think that's what'll happen. I think he'll just get on top and stay on top in that fight. And not necessarily on top in terms of position, but on top in terms of the goings of the fight. The next one is Queally. Now, the Queally one is interesting. Obviously, Queally's coming off of a few losses. I just think this is very good matchmaking by the UFC in terms of getting Queally back on the road, to where they want him, a massive draw for them and all that. He's fighting Daniele Michele, who is not, he's a good fighter. He throws these wild kicks and he's a good wrestler and all of that. I just think Queally, if he puts the pace on him, lands a few of those jabs, Michele's lost 5 times, all 5 by knockout. I think that pace, put a bit of power on him. I think Queally can get the finish here now. It depends. Queally's talked about. He's had a lot of injuries and a lot of tough times over the last while. This is the one I kind of thought about a little bit more. I do believe if Queally can produce, a good percentage of what we have seen from him at his best, I do think he'll win the fight. But sometimes you just never know. But I'm throwing that in there anyway. And then a Selejouj minus 400. Like I've said it a few times, his opponent, Ikrim Al-Faq Al-Hassan, I don't know a lot about him. There isn't a lot of tape out there on him. The bits I have seen, he looks like a good striker. And, I think he's a buggy choke winner as well. So, he can fight. He can fight. He can definitely fight. I just think Asel is so well rounded. It's such a good striker, and I'm telling you, everyone I talk to coming out of SPG, they're all saying Asel. He is the guy. He is, if you want a world champion coming out of SPG, Asel is the guy. And I listen to that. I'm no fool. I'm going to listen to that, and I think throwing him in there as part of this parlay is wise. So Burnell, Barnaoui, Mukahana, Queally, and Ajouj. Right, that is it. Those are the 5 bets. Let's take a quick look at some of the other prices and bets out there. Let's start at the UFC. Straight up prices again on Fiziev and Gamrot. They're moving around a little bit. Minus 150 for Fiziev, plus 120 for Gamrot. We're recording this obviously a little bit early, so there are all of the prop bets and stuff aren't out yet. So I'll just stick to the money line bets for this week. Do you know what, that Mitchell bet against Danny gets? One of those ones where and I've given Mitchell as my bet, right? And I think next week, if I didn't give it as my bet and Mitchell won, I'd be like, why didn't I give it? But also looking at that Ige price, I'm like, oh, why did I give it? Maybe if Ige wins, but that's what betting is all about. Rodriguez and Waterson Gomez, I think that price of minus 350 is just about right for Rodriguez. Love this Fiallo Means fight. Fiallo being minus 225, I actually believe in him. I think he's a very good fighter, but he hasn't produced it over the last while. Plus 163 on Means, I think that's a bit big, to be honest. I do think Fiallo should be favoured, but I think it probably should be closer to maybe plus 150, than plus 225. And I actually see in one book here he's minus 150. He's minus 180 here on one book, so that's closer to accurate. But if I don't know if I'd be backing Means as he's plus 165 here. I'd nearly avoid that one. Honestly, I'd avoid that fight. I like Brian Battler minus 200 against AJ Fletcher. I like Charles Jourdain against Ricardo Ramos at minus 138. Miles John is an underdog against Dan Arqueta. We spoke about Collier versus Usman. Brundish and Malkoun as well. Malkoun's a big favourite there, and I think that's definitely right at minus 450. Hanagoli's the underdog against Mizaku Inoue, and Rindon and Vidal has Vidal as the favourite there. Right, Bellator. I haven't spoken about the main event here in Bellator in the betting show yet, but Fabian Edwards, Johnny Eblen, plus 275. Fabian minus 400 for Eblen. I wouldn't bet on this, to be honest. I think that minus 400, look, it's probably about right, but at the same time, I was thinking about throwing into my parlay, but didn't. I just wonder. I just wonder how this fight will go, to be honest. I wonder, can Fabian stop a few takedowns? You know, he's a very good guy, obviously, to prepare for it, and his brother Leon. I'm just very interested to see how that fight goes. I do think Eblen will win, but I don't like that price. I understand it, but I don't like it. We spoke about Vaitel and Burnell. Cocelli against Saba Hamasi. This is one of the underdog prices I was looking at as well. Plus 200 for Hamasi. Look, that Brendan Ward fight was probably the reason he is that. And I think it's, you know, it is justified. But if that fight hadn't happened, I think it'd be a lot closer than that. But it did, so it's okay. Pico and Carvalho, another fight I mentioned earlier, but haven't talked about in terms of the betting. Minus 800 plus 450 for Carvalho. I was thinking about plus 450 at Carvalho. He's actually plus 600 in another place here. I was thinking about that as my flyer because, look, I'm picking Pico and I do think Pico will win. But how has Pico lost before? Like, he's lost early to guys who have power and throw their hands. Like, Carvalho is a guy who has good power and throws his hands and is very confident. And I, you know, as I said, I think Pico will win, and I'm picking Pico. But I don't think Carvalho's without a chance early against the guy who's shown in the past. Now, okay, you could argue, has he changed? And I think he has, yes. But there's always a chance. Magomed Sharapov versus Nijelski. Plus 350 for Nijelski, minus 549 for Magomed Sharapov. If you were to take this back a couple of fights ago, I think people would be snapping the hand off of Nijelski at that price. But again, his last couple of performances, not amazing. This is on short notice as well. So I probably would avoid. Derek Kelly's minus 1,000 for his fight. Charlie Ward is the underdog, surprisingly enough, here. Plus 175, minus 250 for Gregory Babin. I think that's an even enough fight. To be honest, I'm looking forward to it. And seeing, you know, Charlie in front of the hometown crowd as well is going to be it's going to be big. Kieran Clark, big favourite against his inexperienced opponent in Gorney. He's minus 649. Luca Pilat for Aldo. That's one of the standout fights on the card for me. Maybe going a little bit under the radar. Pilat he's the favourite. Minus 125 against Fernaldo. Minus 105. Probably go for Fernaldo there, to be honest. I like that price. We spoke about Wilson Barnaby. We spoke about Michele Queally, as well as the Assel Ajouj fight and the Mokahana fight. Luke Trainer's on this card as well, minus 450. His opponent was like 14-1, I think. I do like Trainer, but still minus 450 for a guy who isn't that experienced. I probably wait until the next fight to back that. I do think he will win, but yeah, I don't like that price too much. Davy Gallon is on the card at minus 200. Brian Moore is the underdog, plus 105, minus 130. I think they have that just about right there in that. I was going to put Moore as one of my bets at that price. But moving up at 145, it's going to be tough. I interviewed him a few weeks back about it, and it's like, it's a risk on up there, but, and Brian Moore is a guy, I think a lot of people believe in with a lot of reason. So be interested to see that fighting in Scioli and DeBen. Scioli's the favourite at minus 179. All right, everyone, those are the bets for the week. Let me just quickly recap them before we go. Fiziev minus 150, minus 175 from Mitchell. Collier plus 120. Sinead Kavangh minus 150. And in the parlay at plus 326, Burnell, Barnaby, Mokahana, Queally, and Assel Ajouj. All right, everyone. If you're at Bellator, come up to me, say hello. I'm looking forward to going there, and I know a lot of people have bought tickets and are on the way. So if there are any Sheehan Show fans out there, let me know, and we'll have a bit of a chat, and we'll watch a few fights, and they're going to be pretty fun this week. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. I'll see you all next time.